A lexical approach prioritizes learning lexis in natural contexts with lexically rich activities and materials. Unlike presentation approaches, which assume that learners become fluent after a focus on accuracy, the basis of this approach is that learners practice meaningful, useful language towards gaining fluency. Accuracy will follow. In this 15-minute video, we'll look at the theoretical concepts of a lexical approach, the value of students learning meaningful language in natural contexts, and the value of employing lexis as a starting point. Students learn from exposure, learning best in language-rich environments, classrooms with rich materials. The input should be organized. For example, common patterns identified by data, not language selected on the basis of a textbook author or publisher's guess or intuition of the language people use. Secondly, people learn by using language. The goal is not to produce target forms. Rather, it is to achieve communicative outcomes. Learners should try to speak like native speakers in natural, meaningful contexts, working towards fluency, where structural patterns will be noticed and internalized, as opposed to presentation-based theory, which puts a primary focus on accuracy, assuming this will eventually lead to fluency. Finally, words are the building blocks of language and communication. A corpus offers a deep, balanced description of language that provides learners with rich data about how language is actually used. Intuition has been the basis for most course content, course books, but intuition does not identify the most frequent words, phrases, or patterns, or recognize their importance. The language in many course books is often selected on authors' or publishers' assumptions. A lexical approach is not artificial. Content must be based on real language. It is not form-based, which produces language irrespective of meaning. It is not structural or functional-based, approaches positing that a focus on accuracy will lead to fluency. A lexical syllabus allows for focus on the commonest patterns. Learners should be provided with tasks that allow them to notice structures, an important preliminary to internalization, and make generalizations about language. We can call this consciousness raising. With analysis, these common structures can also be organized. A corpus is a compilation of texts that can be manipulated by teachers and students. It is a language resource that may contain billions of entries. There are a number of large corpora. The British National Corpus, 100 million plus entries. The COBILD corpus, with 4.5 billion entries. The iWeb corpus, 14 billion entries. COCA, the Corpus of Contemporary American English, 1.1 billion entries. And the Now corpus, 10 billion entries from newspapers and magazines since 2010. There's even a movie corpus, which includes data from 25,000 movies produced since 1930. The data from these corpora can be organized into, for example, word lists, frequency counts, and can offer insight into what is said over time, culture, topic, or genre. Keenness, for example, helps teachers identify and select target vocabulary by indicating words that appear more frequently in a certain text than in others. Concordances are an initial step in organizing corpus data. Here is a word-in-context concordance, which would include annotation or tagging, frequencies, and the opportunity to move to the next step, collocations. Take a moment, and if you'd like to work with a partner or group, pause the video and contemplate what understanding we can reach about the differences between these two words, agreement and contract, by observing their frequency-based collocations. How does this understanding differ from what a dictionary tells us? I remember a student with a dollar store English to English dictionary once asked me the difference between stare and gaze. I said, look it up. The definition for stare was gaze. She looked up gaze, and the definition was stare. Lex is described by collocation, as is found in a collocation dictionary or similar online resource, gives a rich, vivid, and ultimately extremely helpful picture of a word's usage. In this case, that picture is drawn by, for example, adjective-noun collocations, long-term contract, permanent contract, verb-noun collocations, have a contract, bid for a contract, preposition-noun collocations, in or on a contract, under contract. In essence, learners are not recording words one at a time or out of context. There is abundant exposure, offering opportunities for noticing, analysis, and organization. Moving on to application of a lexical approach, we can ask ourselves how the rich data gleaned from corpora can be useful for teachers. For the rest of this video, I draw on a variety of activities adapted from Dave Willis's The Lexical Syllabus and Michael Lewis's texts on a lexical approach and my own teaching experience. It makes sense to learn words in their typical patterns of use, in their environments. Looking at the task, in number 1, corpus data tell us that strong is the strongest collocation for accent, strong accent. Then slight, slight accent. Then several nationalities, French accent, Spanish accent. But there are others too. Pretentious accent. There's a spectrum of possibilities. In number 2, the data tell us that make is almost the only choice with decision. The chunk is better learned together. Make a decision. In number 3, with many possibilities for reaction, initial reaction, first reaction, gut reaction, we see the value of studying medium-strength collocations. Hearing one suggests the presence of another. Strong collocations don't match with many other words. There are few acceptable options. The link is fixed and accepted. For example, auburn hair. Discharged from the hospital. Auburn and hair make an example of a very strong collocation because there are so few other words that occur with auburn. Weak collocations are when a word can collocate with many others. Big house, left the shop. Big and house is not considered a strong collocation because many words could be used in either place. Looking at the task, list nouns you think commonly occur with bright. It's likely that your collocations included light, bright light, idea, bright idea, colors, future, or side. These collocations are statistically likely. They occur more often. They are strong collocates. Collocation helps identify powerful and useful partnerships. A collocation grid affords learners a chance to think and talk about words. Working in pairs, learners might have a healthy discussion about why, for example, we don't say old history or modern movies. They would discuss language they have heard in use and context. Forks give learners opportunities to learn vocabulary in chunks. Learning chunks, contextualized lexis, is more efficient and effective than looking at words one at a time. It's very difficult to translate the word just in many languages or to understand its meaning from a dictionary, but it is used in a lot of fixed expressions. The teacher could help learners notice how just changes meaning with different verb forms. I've just finished my homework recently, present perfect. I'm just making some tea right now, present continuous. I was just going to call you soon, future. I was just talking to her a short while ago, past. The definition of a word is partly explained by its collocational field. The learner develops understanding of words by spending time in these environments. Giving full reading and writing activities with their content would take up too much space, so I'll spend a few moments describing examples of activity types. There are many more in the Lewis books, particularly Lewis 1997 chapters 6 and 7 and Lewis 2000 chapter 5. A text search of an article, story, or paragraph helps the teacher see what learners think are chunks. Learners identify chunks they are familiar with. The teacher provides feedback and discussion ensues. In text completion exercises, students supply appropriate words or collocations that have been deleted from the text. These are close exercises. In pause reading activities, the teacher reads a story out loud, students can read along, and pauses in the middle of useful collocations. Students complete the chunk. Sentence anagrams are rearrangements of fixed expressions. In paragraph heading activities, students are given a number of paragraphs with a list of possible headings. They match the headings with the paragraphs. In responding to text activities, learners are given the opportunity to practice using fixed expressions in sharing their opinions and observations on a text. They might be encouraged to use such common expressions as, "What I found most interesting or surprising or disturbing was," "I know it says, but I think," and be encouraged to use these expressions in summaries or opinion pieces on the material they have read. A guiding principle of much teaching methodology has been to limit vocabulary instruction so learners spend most of their time mastering grammatical structures. But words should be a starting point. You can do almost anything in language with words. The building blocks of language learning and communication are not grammar, functions, or some other unit of planning, but lexis, particularly multi-word combinations, language chunks, collocations, or fixed phrases. Being exposed to, noticing, contemplating, and then using these is a path towards fluency. A lexical approach values both the quantity and quality of input. A rich language environment that includes abundant, meaningful data, that is corpus-informed, gives learners opportunities to observe or notice language more accurately and ensure they make quicker and more carefully formulated hypotheses. For example, becoming actively involved in looking for regularities, patterns, which are easier to learn than random items. This series of input, noticing, organization, and analysis of useful patterns leads to internalization. To help activate or apply language that has been internalized, corpus-informed materials, for example, activities or tasks, including collocations, are important because the way words combine is fundamental to all language use. Learning lexical phrases, or chunks, like collocations, idioms, fixed and semi-fixed expressions, allows language learners to think more quickly and communicate more efficiently, to become more fluent. I hope you found this brief video helpful and can move on to building and applying your own lexical activities. Thank you so much for your time today.